Welcome to DABCC Radio,
where smart people listen.
Virtualization and Cloud Talk,
Featuring cutting-edge solutions from the hottest companies around the globe.
broadcasting from the DABCC offices in sunny Sarasota, Florida.
Surrounded by computers, books, and Legos.
A Microsoft MVP, Citrix Charter CTP, VMware vExpert.
And your host, Douglas Brown.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of DABCC Radio. We have a great show for you today. We have Imprivata on the line, and I really enjoyed this episode. I'm recording the intro after the episode or after the conversation. I had a blast, and I learned a lot, and Wes is a great guy. So who is Wes? Well, we have our guest today is Imprivata, and our specific guest, the actual person I'm going to chat with, is named Wes Wright, and he is the CTO over there. So, with no further ado, let's get into this. It's great. It's healthcare is huge, and if you're not familiar with Imprivata, they make great solutions for securing and dealing with with clients in healthcare environments. And he's going to talk about the changing world, the new normal, as we sort of joke about, and a lot of different things. So it's a great episode. I hope you guys enjoy it as much as I did recording it. So with no further ado, here's my interview with Wes Wright from Imprivata. Okay, Wes, thank you so much for taking the time to do this with me. I'm really looking forward to this. I know a little bit about Imprivata, but I wouldn't say know a lot about it. So my favorite thing with these podcasts is that I get to learn. So I'm really excited to have you on.
Well, I'm excited to be on, Doug, and I'm hoping I'm going to learn a little bit more about IGEL as well.
I don't know how much I'll share with you. So, but
wait, see. This is going to be a one-way podcast? Come on.
Well, you can ask me questions. Please feel free. We can have a lot of fun. Wherever you want to go, buddy, wherever you want to go.
All right.
So that being said, for those who don't know you, who are you and what do you do over at Imprivata?
Yeah, hi. My name is Wes Wright. I am the Chief Technology Officer for Imprivata. I've been with Imprivata now about a little over 2 years. It's my first venture over onto the vendor side of the fence. Prior to Imprivata, I was CTO at Sutter Health and CIO and CTO at Seattle Children's, CTO at Scripps, and did the same kind of CIO, CTO gig for the last 13 years. I was in the Air Force as well. So I've been doing this healthcare IT gig for quite some time.
Very cool. I walked into Sutter Health when I was at Citrix. We were just selling to Sutter back then.
Yeah.
That was a long, long time ago. Ray Mays was there.
I tell you, I bought a lot of Citrix when I was at Sutter.
Yeah. That was. I remember going in there. A gentleman named Ray Mays ran that. Is he still there?
I recognize the name for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. I can't believe I remember all that. I can't remember. He was a great guy, absolutely great guy. So I remember going up there quite often. Okay, so can you share, for those who might not know who Imprivata is, can you give us sort of the 40,000-foot view of Imprivata?
Sure. Imprivata is mostly known as, for our tap and go solution, our one sign solution. Some people call it TITO, tap in, tap out, and BIBO, badge in, badge out. But that's where we've made our mark in the industry. We're probably on about 60% of the healthcare desktops from an access perspective. It's an access management single sign-on product. But then when Thoma Bravo, a private equity firm, bought Imprivata probably around 4 years ago now, we started to pivot to be more of a digital identity company, and brought some products on. We bought Caradigm, which used to be the old Centillion. You might remember that.
Yep.
And Imprivata-sized re-engineered some of their products, and now we are a digital identity company that, wherever there's a digital ID authentication, the use of a digital ID in healthcare, Imprivata will be there with our technology. So, from the old single sign-on, here's our single product, to a full complete suite of digital identity products, from provisioning all the way through to deprovisioning. We've really become, we think, I think, and I should, since I'm the CTO, the premier healthcare digital identity company.
Absolutely. I've heard it. So you must be
Good.
it, right?
That's right. I read it on the internet, so it's got to be true.
I read it. Actually, I don't think I read it on the internet. I heard it from a person. So
Okay.
maybe an Imprivata employee, but I heard it from a person. So that being said, how is Imprivata doing nowadays? From the CTO perspective, can you give us a quick snapshot of what's new and exciting?
Yeah, we're the whole COVID-19 crisis and pandemic and that kind of thing. It's kind of put a little hitch in our giddy up, I think, along with other companies and our healthcare customers, frankly. So that's we're getting through that, just like healthcare provider organizations, and pretty excited about some stuff that we have coming down the pike. Just right before the crisis really happened, we acquired a company called Ground Control that helps our customers with their iOS devices, and particularly provisioning, deprovisioning, re-imaging, sanitizing, re-imaging. So that's a neat new expanding product for us. Our identity governance product, that's just kind of near and dear to my heart. I think it's the old Centillion ProVision that we kind of took off the engineering shelf and spent a year or so getting it up to Imprivata standards and re-engineering it to some degree. And now we're in the middle of doing our hard launch. We had done a soft launch on it previously, like last fiscal year. And we're in the middle of, really gaining some traction with that product in healthcare. It's a product that is made explicitly for healthcare. So when you're provisioning, we can provision deep into the Epic systems, down to the EMP and SER level, pretty much out of the box, which, with some of our competitors, that costs you a bunch of money to get that connection. And then our GRC portion, our governance, risk, and compliance portion, the part that proves that you're doing what you said you were doing, protecting those digital identities, I think it's the best in healthcare, because we give you the reports that we know that you need out right out of the box. Your user attestation, your periodic access reviews, those kind of reports that your auditors are going to be looking for. We give you those straight out of the box, whereas in other products you have to build those reports. So the ground control, the identity governance, and we're really starting to see an uptick in our mobile device access stuff. And that's the stuff that you can tap into, just like you can on a desktop or an IGEL thin client. You can tap in and tap out. We've gotten the technology to where you can do that on an Android phone. So you can tap in and get single sign-on in your Android phone, just like you do on a desktop. So, and that kind of goes, I think we're going to talk about later, to some of the telehealth kind of that both the ground control and the mobile device access kind of will speak to some of the virtual health stuff that I know that we're going to talk about a little bit later on, Doug.
Yeah. In fact, I want to talk about that now since you bring it up, actually.
Okay.
And yeah, we can move the questions around, There's no hard set rules here on DABCC
What?
Radio.
No rules?
Well, I don't know.
No rules, just right. Didn't that
Yes.
used to be that was an Outback commercial, I think.
Yeah. Oh, America food. So, healthcare is totally, how is it? Well, how do you see healthcare dealing with work from home? Because, nowadays what we've seen is everyone's sort of rushing. We have no choice, right? We're
Right.
all working from home at the moment, and health that has to be a huge difference for the healthcare world. How are
Yeah.
they dealing with it? What are they doing?
Well, there's two different ways. Well, there's the clinical work from home, and then there's the administrative work from home. And it's funny, for the longest time when I was on the other side of the fence, the provider side of the fence, I was pounding down people's doors saying, "Hey, we should let these people work from home. I mean, they don't have to, especially in the Northern California area, where the traffic is just incredibly
Horrible.
bad. Say, well, why don't we let these people work from home? They should be able to work from home." And no, we can't do that. We can't keep track of their productivity. And turns out we can keep track of their productivity. And we just needed the forcing function of a crisis like this to show those folks that were a little bit recalcitrant about it that no, it is a good thing, and your folks do like it. From an Imprivata perspective, what we saw is, as soon as folks started working from home, we offered free remote access licenses through the period of the crisis, which that speaks to Imprivata as a company, and I was really really proud that they did that. It just not even a question. Hey, our customers, our partners are going to need this new capability. We don't want them going out there, having people work from home without some kind of multifactor authentication capability in front of what they're doing. And so we just, right at the end of March, said, hey, look, if you need some more, or just need some remote access licenses, go ahead and use ours. So that's the one side. That's the administrative, people like me, the IT geeks and the revenue cycle people and the folks that always could have worked from home. And then you have the other side, which I think is what we kind of want to get to, and that's the virtual healthcare. We got a lot of physicians or PAs or advanced practice clinicians that are, and I'm doing air quotes, don't know why, working from home in a virtual healthcare perspective. They are here's an old term, telnetting in to their applications that are on-prem or in the cloud, and then bouncing from there, waiting for telehealth visits. And that was pretty extraordinary to see how quickly the health delivery organizations could make that pivot. I've talked to some of my peers who are on the health delivery side, and they still talk to me about what they went through. And they've gone 10x, 100x virtual healthcare visits over this period. So some folks did it rather adroitly, and some people really stumbled through that process. And it's I debate our chief marketing officer, Dr. Sean Kelly. We have a little debate going about how long these extraordinary virtual care telehealth visits are going to be maintained. So that'll be interesting to see. Well, I think it all depends on how long CMS is going to continue to pay the same rate for a virtual visit as they do for an in-person visit.
Interesting.
If they decide to shut that down, say October or so, then I think you're going to see a really steep drop in the number of virtual health visits. Again, I don't think I'll ever go back to the smallish numbers that we had before. But I think you'll see a significant drop. But on the other hand, if CMS decides to pay, until June of next year, the same rate, I think by then the telehealth visit will become so ingrained with both the provider and the patient that it will have become, and I hate to use this word because everybody's using these words, it will become the new norm.
Oh yeah.
And folks just won't, they won't want to not do it. So the short answer is it depends.
We're techies, right? It depends is always the answer, right?
That's right. Always.
Always. In fact, anytime you say it as a techie to another techie, they always laugh because it's
Yeah,
always the answer.
right, right.
That's interesting. So it's more of an economics answer, not a practicality or beneficial or the benefits of it, right?
Yeah, that's my view on it. Now,
I
I
agree with
think
you.
there will be, let's say we were doing 5 to 10% virtual health visits pre-COVID, and now we're bumped up in some cases to 80% or something like that.
Do you think they can
And
give the? Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I don't know, I don't think it's gonna, fall back down to the 5 or 10%. I think we'll probably, hit 20% and bump around there for some time. But another thing, if you think about it a little bit, is we've kind of taught the patient population that a telehealth visit is a second level of care kind of thing,
That was my next
because
question.
we go, hey, if we're going to do this virtual health visit because we can't have you come in and see us. So just kind of, even just subconsciously, we've gone, well, we would prefer to have you come in and talk to us, and so I could see you. But because we can't, we're gonna have you instead do this telehealth visit. And I think we're just kind of subconsciously telling our patients that the preferred way to treat you is with a inpatient visit and not this telehealth. So I think we're teaching them a little bit, to some degree, the telehealth visit is a second tier care.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, can you provide the same amount of care or the same care that you would in person via tele?
Yeah, to a large degree you can, and I do think there's some really cool stuff that's happened out of this virtual care. It's the old, again, geek adage that never waste a good crisis.
Yeah.
And we have, there were some providers, not some, some providers and patients out there that just, the old curmudgeons, I don't want to have anything to do with this telehealth stuff. It's just silly. But now that they've been forced to do telehealth, their minds have been open, and hey, this isn't too bad. And so I think some of the, let's say, like bundled surgeries in the U.S., they bundle a surgery. If you're going to have a knee surgery, part of that payment that you get is, you've got a clinical visit, a pre-op, an operation, and a post-op, and another post-op. Well, those secondary post-ops, they're essentially just wound checks. And so, you just did your surgery, and now you live an hour away from your surgeon's house, and you got to, pile yourself into the car, drive in, wait in the waiting room with all these other people, which we don't want to do nowadays, and then have the surgeon or the surgeon's nurse assistant take a look at your wound and say, "Yep, you're good, no infection there." And then you drive back home, and you're frustrated about the whole thing, and so is the doctor, because they had to take up room on your schedule. Well, I think those type of, just silly kind of things, we'll start seeing that makes for a perfect telehealth visit. And so I think we'll see an adoption of that, and hopefully we'll see a lot more efficiency being wrung out of the healthcare system, where we're not doing those silly kind of things anymore.
You got it. Now, the question, let's get back to the tech side of this, right? So
Okay.
can you secure that, and then with healthcare, of course, you have all sorts of government regulations, and rightfully so. And
Mm-hmm.
this is what Imprivata has been so great at doing for so long, right? Can you secure that today in that, over the internet, so to speak?
Yeah, that's how, Imprivata has made our money, has gotten our chops. We always used to think that, you had to trade off. You have this trade off between security and convenience, and the Imprivata products. We think, yeah, you don't have to do that trade off. You should be able to do things conveniently and securely. Our CEO Gus, he's often says, it's our job to make technology as transparent as possible to our customers, and that's what we try to do at Imprivata. Unfortunately, in this scenario that we're talking about, yeah, we can secure and do secure that enterprise providers connectivity, from wherever they're at into their telehealth system or into their applications. Writing as often as not writing on top of an IGEL client with Citrix or VMware or WVD now, and we can secure that connection. But it's that connection that's coming in from or going out to the patient that we, not yet at least, we Imprivata don't really play in that consumer game right now. We have some things that peripherally touch around the edges, like our patient secure product that attaches a biometric to their medical record number, so when they come in to the healthcare facility, they can just scan their palm vein and we know that that's the right patient. And especially like pre-surgery and stuff when they're a little bit unconscious or not really as on the ball as they may normally be. That's a really good way to just use a biometric to really confirm that this is the patient that I think it is. And oh, by the way, turns out he or she is allergic to penicillin, so guess we better not give them any of that. But we don't really play too hard right now in that really deep consumer area.
Makes sense. You mentioned your CEO, so I want to bring up our CEO. He talks about how out of a crisis comes innovation, and he goes on to talk about, World War II. He says, we went into it on horseback, and we came out of it with the atomic bomb, right? So,
Yeah.
do you see new innovations coming for healthcare out of this COVID-19 crisis?
That's a great question. And I didn't read far enough down the list to see if
It's
that
not
was
in the
actually
list.
Great.
The list for the viewers, the longtime viewers, they know this. We do create a list, but it doesn't mean we stick to it, right? We want a conversation, and you're gonna give me some good stuff here, and this is hopefully a good question.
Oh, I love the question, and immediately what popped into my head is going to go back to our virtual health conversation. And from a healthcare perspective, I think you'll see, I don't think you'll see those big technology leaps like you referenced in the World War II.
Sure.
I don't think you'll see those technology leaps. And sadly, the reason I don't think you'll see those technology leaps is because that technology's already been there. It's always been there. And I think the innovation that we're going to see is actually the adoption of the available technology toward the use of healthcare. I think you'll see a bunch of home monitoring start happening. Our ground, like we talked about earlier, our ground control product, we're seeing that being used in a completely different way. iPads. We were using them, beginning to use them for like the MyChart bedside or something like that, an Epic product. You'd hand them to a patient and say, hey, here, use this to do your MyChart stuff. And now with the COVID thing, it's here, use this, and we've got Zoom and Facebook and WhatsApp and all that other stuff loaded on there. So use this not just for your MyChart, but use this to communicate with your family. Well, that technology's been around forever. We just haven't applied it that way. And one of the really cool use cases is here, we gave you an iPad. We know what that iPad is called. We know what your username is. So, when the nurse comes by to check up on you, he or she is going to do a video call to that iPad, and she's going to be doing what we call inpatient telehealth visits with you, so that she or he doesn't have to burn a set of PPE, personal protective equipment, when they walk into the room just to check up on you and say, hey, how are you doing? And instead, they'll be standing out in the hall looking in the room and can wave to you and do a virtual visit right there on the iPad, from 20 feet away. And that technology's always been there. And I think the innovation, it's going to be that kind of innovation that happens. So I don't think there'll be a big technological leaps in healthcare, but I think there'll be some adoption that should have always been there that will happen. And it goes back to the, never waste a good crisis.
You got it. You got it. That's a great answer, and I love it. I love it because you look at some industries, banking's maybe another one, right? Where there's so much technology that can be leveraged to make the experience better for the consumer, right, and for the
Yep.
business too.
Yeah.
But they're not because of sort of legacy way of thinking or maybe regulations too, where something like this just totally breaks all that, and we have to do things because we don't have any other choice. And then out of it comes, let's call it innovation in a way, or progress.
Yeah, it's what I've termed evolutionary innovation.
Yeah.
Not revolutionary, but more evolutionary innovation.
I love it. I love it. I love it. Well, speaking of innovation and new ways of doing things, the cloud is definitely changing everything, right?
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
So, but hospitals in the cloud is sort of like, wait a second, hey, this is not on-prem. We don't control this. How do you see, technologies like VDI and Cloud DAS fit in the hospital environment, and does I hate the new norm too. Wes, I really hate when people say
I know,
this,
but it's it describes it so perfectly that you can't help but use it.
That's exactly right. Although I think all this is going to go away at some point. We're all going to go back to the same people we always were, the miserable people that we were, but maybe we won't, right? So maybe there is a new norm. But that said, how do you think Cloud DAS, VDI, and stuff like that fit into the sort of new norm for the hospital environment?
They don't just fit. I mean, to me, that's the way we're gonna do compute. We can't go back to fat client and PC. I've briefed this many times to many people. I think, in particular, from DAS provider perspective, and caveat here, we do have a really big and great partnership with Microsoft, but I think from a DAS perspective, desktop as a service perspective, I really truly believe that the Windows Virtual Desktop offering will change the way that we do compute in health IT. And surprisingly, it might actually start bending that cost curve down a little bit.
Yeah.
So I think there's a huge demand for it out there. And again, this good crisis, not good crisis, but a good crisis,
sure,
has really woken a lot of people or changed the minds of a lot of people that were anti-VDI, and a lot of them were anti-VDI just because it costs so damn much to stand up a VDI environment on-prem. You're going to spend $1 million worth of hardware for 4,000 or 5,000 users on-prem, and you've got to be a substantial health delivery organization in order to be able to afford it. So a lot of people just gave up on it.
Yeah.
And now that we have desktop as a service, and I think a really really efficient and good from all the providers, the VM and Citrix and Microsoft, they've all stepped up their game. Again, some of it directly in relationship to the crisis, but I just in a back office environment. Remember the ones I was talking about before, the remote workers. We never would have considered the revenue cycle and patient registration. Those HIMSS, the medical record people. We never would have considered deploying VDI to them because it was so expensive. And so, once every 4 years, we would go and replace their desktops with a brand new PC. And, the PC cost wasn't that big a deal. You get those $600-800, no big deal. But it was the manpower to go and replace them and move this from here to there and so on and so forth. Pretty soon you were looking at like $1,200 to $1,500 a unit.
Yeah. If you could, don't forget managing the thing too, right?
Oh yeah.
That's twice as much as the price of the machine.
Oh yeah,
recurring.
Huge attack surface.
Yeah.
And we just gave up on VDI for them. And what I think you're going to see is that with the new DAS offerings that we do have, particularly Windows Virtual Desktop, those back office employees, not the frontline clinical providers, but those back office employees will give them an IGEL that lasts, 10 or 12 years. And as solid state, pieces and parts don't break, and we'll give them an IGEL and a desktop out of the cloud, a VDI desktop out of the cloud, and say, go at it. And for the next, we'll be able to skip 3 hardware refresh cycles with them, and in some cases saving millions of dollars a year for the health delivery organization. So yeah, I really think that because of the crisis and the way that people have surged into using VDI, a lot of it for the remote workers, and sadly I've heard some organizations that just went out and said, oh well, we gotta send this many people to do remote work. Well, let me buy another 1,200 laptops and hook them all up and put the image on them and then ship them out to people. That's old time. That you're not going to see that anymore. Not with the desktop as a service or offerings that we have out there.
I love it. And I wrote down, you mentioned fat clients. Come on, I have to bring up IGEL, right? But you brought it up yourself too. And I think that's one of the things that sort of, IGEL's not your, boy, let's date ourselves. It's not your father's Oldsmobile, right? It's not the thin client of what did you think of? So where do you see something like that? You answered it, but I'll ask it again in some ways, or I'll ask it to you. But where do you see a solution like an IGEL fit, right?
I think, I think, as I mentioned, I think you can go through the back office, that single user, that type 1, what we call it, Imprivata, that type 1 PC, where it's a single user PC. You can go through that back office and just replace every one of those PCs with an IGEL device that hooks up to, let's say, a Windows Virtual Desktop. And those back office people were doing almost all their work in the cloud anyhow. If you think about it, I think 85% of our Imprivata clients, or at least 85% of our Imprivata clients, are also Office 365 users, and that's all in the cloud. So, and they're staying up there in the cloud using their Office 365, their N4s, their Workdays, all that back office stuff is already cloud based, and so you can just hook up an IGEL device there when they come into work, if they continue to come into work, and let them go to it in the cloud land. What I see that I think is going to change a bit, though, is that, and I never did this when I was on the health delivery side of this, just because the capabilities weren't quite there yet, and our mindset wasn't there yet either. What I think you are going to see is, instead of people shipping laptops out to a remote worker, you're going to see them shipping IGELs out to a remote worker, and saying, "Here, hook this up. This is how you connect to our network." We don't want you using your PC anymore. One, we don't think it's fair. Two, we can't manage it. So here, just put this on your network, and we'll manage it remotely for you, and we can make sure that one, the security is good, and two, the performance is there for you. So I think we might start seeing a lot more of these thin client devices out in the remote workers' homes.
You got it. Are you familiar with the UDU Pocket? Do you see value putting something like the UDU Pocket into a existing, user's machine and then managing that?
I haven't played with it enough, Doug, to tell you the truth. I could see, one or the other. I just don't. I know what it is, how it works. Really like the way that it's the same IGEL software that you've extrapolated from the IGEL hardware, so you can manage it within the same management control plane. But I just haven't played with it enough to see where the gotchas might be if I try and put that onto somebody's personal device.
Yeah. Yeah. And to us, it doesn't matter, right? You know, we have different solutions for different needs and what have you. And so sometimes the UD Pocket fits great. And sometimes, you know, a piece of hardware that we know and you can trust, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
within healthcare, you really need to trust that device. And
Right.
maybe the home PC is not what you trust because, you know, as an engineer, there's unknowns and we don't like unknowns, right?
Right. Well, and you know, to some degree, we've always hated on the HDO side, health delivery organization side, we've always hated doing anything to anybody's personal PC. I
I
mean,
agree.
just because they will, you know, even like putting a VPN on there, you know, that because they will they will inundate, they will bombard your help desk with the, hey, I loaded this software that you told me to load on my personal PC, and it's not performing this, or it broke this, or it deleted that. You know, all of which is not
You got
really
it.
the case, but you know, it's a coincidence of timing. So that's why I kind of hesitate about the UDP Pocket, you know, putting that on a personal somebody's personal device.
Yeah. I've always said, Wes, that once you touch the device, just touch it. You own it,
Yeah, yeah,
right?
yeah.
You
From a
own it.
support
You're
perspective,
responsible for it.
yep, yep. From a support perspective, I mean, and it makes sense. I mean,
Yeah.
you can't blame folks for that.
No, no, you can't. And this is even something like a Citrix client, right? Once you
Yep,
throw the Citrix client on there, well,
yep,
you now own that device. And if their favorite game doesn't work, well, it's Citrix's fault, or
exactly.
whatever,
Yep,
you know. So
yeah. That's why. I mean, that's why I do like the URL based stuff. You know, hey, here, go to this URL, and you can get your VDI device, or your VDI, and run it, you know, completely web based. And maybe that might be kind of cool from a UDP perspective, a UDP Pocket perspective, if you could, you know, somehow launch to a bank of UDP Pockets that are in the cloud somewhere, and you go from a URL, then you launch that UDP session. Then you're not loading anything on that personal device.
sure.
Hmm, there you go. New product idea for you, Doug.
Yeah, you got it. Well, you are loading something. There's always something being loaded, but the
Right,
users don't know that. So it's a
right,
good
right.
thing,
The
right?
user doesn't know that you told them to download some software, so that
Yeah.
then your chances of getting blamed are less. How's that?
That's exactly correct. It's exactly correct. They don't understand the idea of a plugin, which
Right.
is good. So back to the sort of these virtualization vendors, these cloud vendors. Do you
Mhm.
see them maybe change or offering in the coming years specific solutions for healthcare environments? The Amazons, Microsoft, Citrixes, VMwares. I'm here.
Um,
Yeah, I'll leave it at that.
I do, mostly because, again, I mentioned earlier in the call our
Sure.
Microsoft partnership, and we're driving that way with Microsoft, and their Windows Virtual Desktop offering, is, you know, eventually, and this is way over the horizon kind of thinking. Well, not way over, but at least it's over the horizon kind of thinking. Eventually, we want to be able to jointly between us and Microsoft is offer a healthcare Windows Virtual Desktop,
Yeah,
you know,
that's where
and
I was going.
potentially a couple of different flavors. You know, the one with single sign-on, and then the one that has single sign-on and clinical workflows and EPCS, and then a third one that has, you know, all that and secure walkaway and so on and so forth. So yeah, I definitely see the molding, and I think with Microsoft's newest announcement came out like last week or maybe earlier. Yeah, I think it was late last week, about how their first focus is going to be on their healthcare Azure cloud, or some such
Yep,
thing
I
like
saw
that.
that also.
Yeah, that I do think you'll start seeing some healthcare specific DAS VDI offerings. Uh, yeah, and like I said, I'm kind of trying to drive Imprivata. Well, not drive Imprivata, but make that partnership between Imprivata and Microsoft happen from a WVD perspective. You know, we offer Microsoft has a seamless single sign-on offering that is very cloud-based, and pretty much all the cloud vendors offer something like that. And we partnered with them with our OneSign product and turned it into, because we're marketing geniuses, a healthcare seamless single sign-on. So I think you'll start seeing, they'll have Windows Virtual Desktop, and then we'll have a healthcare Windows Virtual Desktop. So yeah, I don't that's not too far over the horizon, in my opinion.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense, right?
Oh yeah,
It's one size does not fit all, and as
yeah,
they mature their product, they'll start getting into to start making special solutions for special people, right? And then that becomes sort of turnkey, right?
yeah. And I think that's back in the conversation we talked about friction and removing friction. Well, that's if you can make a healthcare specific desktop as a service offering that a healthcare IT administrator just has to go subscribe to, well, you just removed a ton of friction. Maybe not the friction at the clinical elbow, like we were talking, like we normally talk about, but removing that back office friction is a huge deal. I mean, think about this. Friday they said, okay, we're closing down Monday. I want everybody to work from home. You know how many IT directors and CTOs just kind of jaw dropped and said, how am I going to do this? Well, they're in the future when you have that healthcare desktop as a service, and they can just go, okay, well, let me associate these digital IDs to the capability of getting these desktop as a service VDIs at their home. Boom, it's done.
Yeah, makes sense. So back to here's a good question for you. So at IGEL, a lot of our customers are asking about ProofID Embedded versus
Mm-hmm.
ProofID Web, right?
Mm-hmm.
What is Imprivata's position on this one? Do you have a recommendation?
Yeah, this one is a kind of a head scratcher, frankly, Doug. Unlike everything else, we're actually trying to move away from a web-based application. So we're moving away from ProofID Web, although we're still using it in some of the back end of some of our other applications, and really want to move toward ProofID Embedded, because they tell me, frankly, and this surprised me, that with ProofID Embedded, we can get our updates and hotfixes out quicker, which is quite the opposite you'd think would happen from a web-based versus a embedded product. So yeah, we're encouraging all of our zero client, thin client vendors to move to ProofID Embedded, and I know IGEL's already there, so you got a leg up on everybody else.
That's great. I mean, that's really great for IGEL, right? Because we support the ProofID Embedded. So it's sort of weird about the web thing, but I understand too, right?
Yeah, but what happens? Come to find out, Doug, what's happening is because we're using the web, we're kind of holding some of the thin and zero client vendors like IGEL back, and now with using ProofID Embedded, you can get your updates out. You can use that as a competitive advantage against some other folks. So they tell me that, like I said before, that the updates can happen quicker depending on the speed of that particular vendor. And like you said, IGEL's already got the ProofID Embedded, and so you have a lot more control over the updates that you can do to your product to use the Imprivata product that much better.
Makes sense. So the when you're saying hotfixes and things of that nature, you're talking about what's actually in the IGEL OS then.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay.
So you have a lot more control of it than having to hook into that ProofID Web solution. Instead, you can manipulate your OS to work better with the ProofID Embedded.
Makes sense, and we definitely want control over that, and
yeah.
Also, it just makes a lot of sense. Okay,
yeah, and most of the vendors like you, they do want a little more control. Of course, they all want control of what they're putting on their silicon, but when it comes to healthcare and Imprivata, the more control that the thin and zero client vendors have, the better for our joint customers.
Absolutely, absolutely. So you mentioned VDA. Anything on the future of VDA licenses from Imprivata?
From a licensing perspective, I don't really know too much about that. That's more, our
Sure.
product folks. Barbara Dumouriez, she's our SVP of product. But from an architecture perspective, I can tell you that again, we are architecting that to be not more, but totally cloud-based, so that you can use our VDA technology to take advantage pretty seamlessly, or should I say frictionlessly, and move between an on-prem VDI, DAS VDI, be it Citrix or VM or Windows Virtual Desktop. So that's what we're doing from a technology and architecture position with our VDA. I'm pretty excited about the direction that we're headed on that, and hopefully we'll be able to roll something out here in the next 6 months or 6 to 8 months or so.
I love it. I love it. And I love the fact that you said, well, that's licensing. I don't deal with the license. I always say, I'm an engineer. I don't know anything about licensing. Go talk to the
Right,
sales.
right. That's it. I do. I kind of take the coward's way out on pricing too. It's just, hey, I don't,
Me also.
I, and I don't know how much it costs. You'll have to ask your regional sales manager. I'm
Exactly.
intentionally ignorant on that,
Yeah,
frankly.
100%, man. 100%. Totally. Okay, Wes. I think that that's all the questions I have for you. I do have two more. We always end up the podcast, or that's all the ones I want to ask you specifically. But we
Hmm.
always end the podcast on two questions. That is sort of competition in the future. So if you don't mind, I'd like to go. You don't have to. You can answer these any way you want, of course, right?
Uh-huh.
So competition. Why would I want to go the Imprivata route versus the competition or the do it yourself way, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, hey, I actually have a slide on the do-it-yourself. I said the title of it was "Don't Home Depot Your Identity and Access Management Solutions."
Isn't that though always the number one competitor is do it yourself?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I think so. I think for healthcare, I really, truly, and having been on the health delivery organization side for 25 years, I really, truly believe that our identity and access management, Imprivata's identity and access management suite of tools, combined with our Microsoft partnership, offers the most comprehensive identity and access management solution set for healthcare. And that's really important. Imprivata, everybody knows what we do is healthcare. That's what we focus on. All of our focus is on healthcare. So that's a huge competitive advantage for us, because most of the other vendors that we compete with are horizontal plays. And oftentimes it's trying to fit that round peg into the square hole with their offering. You really got to put a lot of sweat equity in to make something that somebody built for finance work well for healthcare. But you don't have to do that with Imprivata. And what is 15, 20 years ago, we used to buy an ED system and an OB system and a cardiovascular system and a radiology system. And we used to try and stitch all those together and make a clinical record. But now look what's happened. You have the Epics, the Cerners, the Meditechs, the Allscripts offering these joint solution sets for your clinical workload. And that's what I see kind of happening in the identity and access management world is people will buy something for their remote access. They'll buy something for their provisioning and deprovisioning. And they'll buy something else for their GRC. And they'll buy something else for EPCS. And then they'll have to stitch all that together. Well, that just, we've got proof that didn't work. And the way it evolves is to a consolidated vendor who's responsible for getting all that stuff stitched together at the warehouse and shipping it to your dock, completely integrated. And that's why I think we'll win out, and we are winning out on the competition in healthcare, because more and more CIOs, CTOs are going, man, I don't want this headache of stitching these many disparate products together. And when I upgrade product B, I might break product A or product C. I don't need that headache. I'm going to go with Imprivata. They'll give me the complete identity and access management solution set from end to end with Microsoft integrated, and I don't have to worry about that. So that's I think where we're going to win in the marketplace, Doug.
I love it. I love it. And the last question is, the future. And throughout this podcast, you've talked a lot about the future. Actually, different. In fact, almost the entire podcast has been about the future, right?
Yeah.
But that being said, is there anything else you'd like to add? Anything you could share with us?
I think and we all know this, but the future is frictionless, and I think much like IGEL is doing, and we're doing at Imprivata, the more friction you can take out of health IT, be it in the administrative side or at the clinical desktop and the provider's elbow. The people who can reduce that friction and make that technology as transparent as possible to both the clinical and business user, those are the folks that are going to win. And that is the future for healthcare IT, and it's frictionless.
I love it. I love it. I love it. I love it. Wes, thank you so much. I've really enjoyed this. So
Yeah, me too,
you're a
Doug.
great guy.
Thanks, man.
This has been a lot of fun.
Yeah,
So,
I've really enjoyed myself.
yeah, well, good. So thank you so much for taking the time to do this.
Oh, sure. My pleasure.
Okay, that concludes another successful episode of DABCC Radio. As always, I want to thank my guest for today. Wes, thank you so much. I really enjoyed the conversation. We had a great conversation before the show, very short one after the show, but and then the show itself was second to none. I really enjoyed it. Yeah. Great guy, great conversation. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Definitely check out what the folks at Imprivata is doing. The world's changing, and these guys are going to be part of that. So what else do I say except for thanks to each and every one of you for listening to DABCC Radio. If you like the show, if you like this episode, please tell a friend. If you don't, well, tell me and tell me why. If you'd like to be on the show, please send me an email, brown@igel.com or dbrown@dabcc.com, and we'll make that happen. That's simple. Make things happen. That's what we do here. So without further ado, stay safe, everyone. Have a great day. And thank you for listening to DABCC Radio.
DABC.
Say it again, DABCC.
DABC.
Can you say it again, DABCC?
DABC.
How about DABCC?
DABC.
DABCC.
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 DABCC.